Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
And my name is Dan.
and we're here to review game week 11. Just the start of the international break, so if you've had a bad game week, you get to sit and look at it for 2 weeks. If you've had a good game week, you get to sort of sit and dwell on that for 2 weeks. Dan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Angus. Green Arrow this week after a bad midweek one. Um, Played me overhaul, so set myself up for away days in 12. I was sort of in a funny position where I was going to take quite a lot of minus hits to get it there, just with things shaping up. So I just done the overhaul in the end, and on Luton won. So yeah, not a bad game week.
Yeah. So the normal sort of thing this week, we're going to go through our teams, then we'll go through the games, and we'll finish off by going through your questions. So I'll kick us off. I took a -8 this week, again with a view to sort of away days in 12. I decided to sort of be aggressive with it this week. I was going to take a -4 anyway as part of getting Pookie in. Um, So I'd done Swift and Estupinian to Brownhill and Pookie, and then I took the additional hit to go Wallace to Willock, which ended up not quite paying off for me this week. I think across the totality of the players that I sort of bought and sold and the hit, I was at about -4, -3, -4, which isn't terrible, and it means I'm better set up for the away days, which is the main thing. But 78 -8, so 70 net. Amos started for me, which was already a plus point. Back four all doing the business: Giles, Jones, Bree, and Amatodzic. Chair as captain, which was 12. Brownhill 5. Morris with another goal, 6. Pookie vice captain for 10. And then just Willock and Sargent, the only ones who didn't really do anything for me. So pretty happy with that. It was only a 2-place red arrow for me, so I'm 127th, which sort of being sat in that sort of position, particularly as I'm about to play away days, feels like quite a good position to be in. How did your week go, Dan?
Yeah, so I played the overhaul. I got 77. Um, Amos in goal for 7. Um, I did on my overhaul pick both Wigan goalies just to cover myself off. Giles 10, Jones 8, Bree 8, Aaron's 3, Chair and Willock 6 and 3, Brownhill 5. I captained Piero. I went for a punt. My plan is to change that to Morris for next game week, but I think we've seen Hull defensively not very good, and I felt in general the last few weeks I've not been aggressive enough with my striker picks, maybe taking punts earlier. So I woke up that morning. I thought I'm going to take a punt here, and he got 9, so double to 18. So he did get a return, but he could have hauled in this match. Pookie vice captain for 10, Muniz for 2. Just to round off my other, just to let you know for the overhaul, Jones, as I said, back up for Amos, Abene 3, Brady 1, Field 3 on the bench. So they don't really count, but they're just squad players. I've got a green arrow of about 120 places up to 381. Midweek was a disastrous game week, just no one really returned. So all that work getting back up to about 250, have just lost it all again. So yeah, I'm playing away days in the next game week, and I'm hoping to get close to that top hundreds. That would then mean I've used all my boosts. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of thing as well when we talk about the use of the overhaul, where it was partially sort of fixing some issues, but then setting yourself up well for what's to come as well. So I think that's the sort of thing where the overhaul can be really useful. I'll just touch briefly on the pod team. 73 minus 4, so 69 net, which was a green arrow. The pod team is at 336th overall. We took out Grant and Stewart and brought Muniz and Pirro. We captained Pirro. We vice captained Pookie. We were starting Saar, who didn't show up. So we had Jones, Powell, Bree, Aarons, and Brady, Chair and Ogbene, and then Muniz, Pirro, and Pookie. So not a bad week. Yeah, a lot of the same players except for the sort of Ismail Assar injury issue, which I'm sure will come up again. But yeah, and that one, like my team, is only one boost used, so obviously the potential
Doing better than me
to improve that. But we'll get into the games. And the first game that we have was the early kickoff on Saturday, which was Swansea 3, Hull 0. So Dan, talk to us about this one.
Yeah, so the key lineup was Bender was still in goal. Obafemi was on the bench. For Hull, Baxter started in goal over Ingram, and they played 4-3-3 with Vale and Pelkas either side of Estupinan. And the main talking point in this match was just Pirro. He hit the bar. Well, he hit the woodwork twice, missed a big chance, and it was only until late on when the Hull basically gave him the ball so he went through and scored. But yeah, it's hard to really judge Swansea on this game because I think Hull was so bad defensively like without the ball. It's way too easy to play through them, and I'll be amazed if Hull get through this international break still with Shotta as the manager. I was happy with Pirro as a punt, but I've mentioned, he'll be coming out for Morris this week. I don't know what you thought about this game, Angus.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to watch as much of it live, although I did see sort of, the highlights and the important points. And yeah, I mean, I think that the headlines were sort of Hull's defending and Pirro in terms of the haul that could have been.
Yeah.
So obviously, as you said, those are sort of the main things. I mean, I was having multiple conversations with people trying to work out whether the second or the third goal was funnier, which sort of tells you all you need to know. The undisputed answer is the second goal.
Yeah, when the goalie trips up the defender.
No, so that
Was
was the
that not the
best
one?
part. I watched this back. Figueiredo, who was also at fault for the third goal, he is clearly trying to draw a foul, and he knows that someone's coming behind him, but he doesn't know who it is. Baxter then pulls up short of him to make sure he doesn't sort of take him out, but Figueiredo goes down because he's anticipating the contact coming, and so you just end up with this absolute mess, and Kundal getting his first professional goal as a result, and it's just incredible. You couldn't make it up, but yeah, I guess that's the big thing, isn't it? Like, surely the manager has to be gone.
I think so. Yeah, it. I think even when they were winning at the start of the season, they looked ropey at the back, and a
Mm.
few times they were running luck on, and mistakes were happening for the other team. So they were basically giving us stupid and goals, but it's just not happening at the minute. If they, it's a tricky one. As a Luton fan, we play Hull next, so I'd quite like Shotta to still be there. As I've mentioned, Morris is on such good form, and if the way they're gonna play with us on the counter, you'd like to think we do quite well. So I think Morris would definitely be someone I'd be bringing in even just for that game, to be honest.
Yeah,
Swansea, like I said, it's hard to judge them. I think Piro's looking a bit better. I don't know whether the window closed and he's there now and he's just focusing until January, and then we'll see again what happens with him. But apart from that, it's massively target hole. But I'm not convinced by any options from either of these sides at the minute.
No, and it's worth noting 3 of Swansea's next 4 are away to West Brom, Watford, and Burnley. So
Yeah,
they've got a home game against Sunderland in the middle there. But
which ain't easy either.
so that might be the if you're not sort of a Swansea fan and determined to have Swansea players, that might be the push you need to get rid of Swansea players. But we'll move on to our next game, which was Watford 2, Sunderland 2. So obviously an interesting game, this one. Sunderland had to sort of try something different again with the lineup with Sims. I think they were going to have a late assessment of him, and he didn't make the game. So they sort of, they were playing with sort of almost a false 9. And Mowbray had talked up the ability of Pritchard to play as a false 9 before the game, which sort of gave away that Sims probably wasn't going to make the game. But yeah, I mean, and then on the other side you had the Ismail Assar thing, where he was going to be a late assessment, but he was close, and then the lineup drops and he's not there. Particularly when the other late assessment I think had been Ken Sema, who was there. Oh no, it was Courtney Hawes who made it. Basically, all the other injury question marks made the team. Sort of Sema, Kamara, and Hawes, and Sarr was the only one who didn't, which must be so frustrating for owners. I'm still not sure about Watford, particularly if they don't have that extra star quality. Obviously they got a point from this game. They were in position to win it after the Davis opener and the quite hilarious Luke O'Nien own goal. Perfect header into the corner. Obviously, Alessi had got the goal in between those, but Jewison Bennett, the new Costa Rican signing, got the goal late on to equalise, and I think that will sort of irritate Watford as well because they were in position to win that game, even though it was a relatively, I think, even game. The fact that they couldn't see it out will be annoying for them. From the Sunderland point of view, I think particularly when they're in this situation where they're sort of almost having to cobble a lineup together, the fact that they're still competitive and still actually picking up points here and there in this period will be important sort of further down the line, when they get the likes of Sims and then Stewart back and are able to play a more quote unquote normal lineup. But yeah, it's tough with both of these teams in Gaffr at the moment. I don't know what your thoughts are on them, Dan.
I think I'd be more willing to go towards Sunderland at the minute. I think I started with Pritchard, and over time I took him out. But I think, especially over the last couple of games, I think Clark's done quite well. Even Pritchard's ticking along. Embleton, Roberts. If they keep a solid um, team behind a striker or a false 9 or whatever they play, I think one of them. They're so cheap that they're going to be good options throughout the season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were panicking with the lineup which in a number of places listed for the Watford side listed Joao Pedro as playing right wing back. If he was playing right wing back, looking at sort of the positions he was in and everything, he's playing one of the most aggressive right wing backs I've ever seen. No, he was playing in the attack, but he's one that I can understand people sticking with, particularly if they've already got him. And then we've talked about Kamara. I mean, it was almost an assist for him on the first goal. If Patterson doesn't get something on it, then Davis probably sort of gets on the end of Kamara's ball anyway. So he's the other one I potentially look at. But I do think that you're probably right about Sunderland being the more attractive of the two to me at this point as well. We'll move on to our next game though, which was Burnley 2, Bristol City 1. Dan talked to us about this one.
Yeah, so lineup news. Vitinho started on the bench. Madsen came in at left back. Bayer, the centre back, came in for Taylor, who I think was injured. For Bristol City, it was pretty much the same lineup. Apart that included Semenyo still on the bench. Just the main talking points in this match is Jay Rodriguez has now got 5 goals in 7 games, so he's not been explosive, but he's been ticking along. The assist was from Madsen, so it's frustrating with Madsen. He doesn't seem 100% nailed, which is a bit of a problem when you've got assets like Jones, Giles, Bree, the Sheffield United guys, Aaron's, who are nailed. It's a bit more of a problem. I did want to mention about Bristol City. They made a double change at half time, and this was something we've been talking about with the Conway situation. He scored in the first half, I think he did, and he still got taken off at half time. So did Alex Scott. So I don't know if Pearson just thought he needed a bit more experience on the pitch. Semenyo did come on. So yeah, I'm quite happy with. I don't have any from either side. I know Jay Rodriguez is an option for maybe in an away days. I mentioned online that I thought he was probably the 4th best striking option that for away days that week. But I don't know if you like anyone from Burnley or Bristol City. Angus?
I think there's always something to be said for Madsen, but particularly if you're wanting to rely on him for a boost, that might be something you want to think twice about. But I think the upside on him is at a point where I can totally understand anyone wanting to go with him. Brownhill's sort of the reliable
Brownhill's one, yeah.
I still like Nathan Teller as a pick, even though he didn't sort of return in this one. But yeah, if it were me, I'd probably be looking at Matson, Brownhill, and Rodriguez. I think those are probably the 3. Bristol City.
I've got a feeling after the international break, Semenyo is going to be starting.
Yeah, I mean the fact it took sort of 45 minutes, like it's been sort of he's been getting more and more time as it's gone along. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me at all. A lot of people who haven't already sold wondering what to do with Vyman. We've talked about it, I think, a couple of times. Do you think it's a sell at this point?
I think it probably is, just because he hasn't scored recently. I know he had that game week when I still had him. He got 2 assists. I just think there's going to be better options where I think you want to be a bit more aggressive up front, especially if we're moving towards having Pookie as maybe our main option again. I think those other two slots you have to be aggressive with this season.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking beforehand about the potential advantages of being aggressive in the striker position. Obviously, I've benefited from it recently. I mean, I went early on Estupinian, and sort of I then had him for that game where he had the hat trick.
And the
and then I
Morris
went
2
early on
goals.
Carlton Morris. And so I think that sort of reinforces the idea that like strikers in particular are potentially the place to be aggressive if you're wanting to make a move. Like look to go not necessarily super early, but like if you see one you like, particularly if they've got a run you like or there's a point to get in that you like, it's worth just going and getting them.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with that.
but yeah, so I think Vyman is probably a sell as well. Actually, I think he's going to continue playing in that role behind the striker, so he'll probably pick up points at various points, but I don't think he's going to pick them up to the same degree there.
It might end up, and obviously it's a wait and see, that Semenyo becomes the main option
Yeah.
there.
So we'll move on. The next game we have is Norwich against West Brom. So obviously this finished 1-1. In terms of the sort of headlines, I mean, for Norwich, you had Sarah come in to start in midfield. And for West Brom, the big news was that Thomas Asante got the start up front. We'd sort of been wondering about when that might come, given that he'd looked bright for them the last sort of couple of times he'd come on.
You sort of called that anyway, didn't you, Angus? I
Yes.
know you mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah, I think I
That you
said.
thought it was
I
going to
think I
start.
actually predicted that it would happen in this game as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you predict something enough times, it's going to be right. The other thing, obviously, for West Brom was Darnell Furlong coming back into the team, having been dropped for a couple of games. That I think that potentially made a difference for them. For those who I know, lots were jumping off West Brom assets this week. For those who kept John Swift, they obviously got an assist. Nothing for Jeb Wallace. I don't think he even got bonus in this game. And for those already on Pookie or who bought Pookie, they got an assist after his shot hit Sam Byram and went in.
A bit annoyed because I had Pookie in a treble to score, and the other two came in, Isak and Jay Rodriguez. That'd
Yeah.
have been nice, 160 quid.
But yeah, so I think that particularly those are the main ones. I mean, a lot of people are on Josh Sargent, who's sort of blanked in this game. I don't think his place is suddenly under threat.
No.
But this is one of the tougher opponents they're going to face as well. I think that's the other thing to bear in mind. But I think in the end, probably both teams will probably be relatively content to take a point out this game. I know Steve Bruce had a couple of complaints afterwards. I would like to say the penalty that he's asking for is
No,
never a
that's
penalty
never.
in a
No.
million years. Like, I don't know if someone was arguing for that against Steve Bruce's team, he'd be fuming. So you might want to rein that in. And yeah, I don't think there was anything wrong with Byram on the goal.
No.
I've seen another angle. He's clearly onside, and I don't think it hits his hand either. So I think that was fine. So that was the one thing where he was sort of talking about refereeing decisions going your way, and it's like that's when you start worrying about a manager, when he's worrying about things like officiating decisions. You start to think, oh, is he sort of spotting the end near? And it's obviously been sort of mentioned a few times recently about how much longer Bruce has left in the job. I don't know what you think on that, Dan.
Well, I'd get rid of him now.
I mean, we would have
Let's
got rid
be
of
honest.
him like
Well, I
months
wouldn't
ago.
have hired him.
Yeah, I think
Look,
I was quite scathing on the pod when he was hired. So
yeah.
my feelings on the matter are quite clear.
Just taking it back to Gaffr,
Yeah,
Angus, with the West Brom assets, I know a lot of people did jump off them. I still think if you want to keep Wallace or Swift, one of them, I think that's okay. I wouldn't be doubling up at the minute.
no, I mean part of the reason I went off both at once was with a view to the away
The
days in
away
12.
days, yeah.
So it was just giving myself one less thing to worry about and be able to adjust to whatever happened this week. and over the break if I went ahead and got rid of both of them at once. Otherwise, I probably would have got rid of one and held one, like you say. So yeah, I think that's probably the best approach with them now. Carl and Grant a definite sell.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
even if he wasn't, even if he hadn't frustrated you into selling already, he will have done now. But we'll move on to the next game, which was Luton 2, Blackburn 0. Dan, talk to us about this one.
Yeah, so during midweek against Coventry, we were poor defensively, and Jones made a few subs, but a few changes. Burke and Lockyer came back into the back three. Bell came back in at left wing back, and Lansbury, who came back in as centre mid. We've sort of been playing a midfield three of Campbell, Clark, and Freeman, and there's not really an out and out sitter. So Lansbury, it just brought balance towards our team, a bit of protection. Adebayo and Cornick weren't in the squad, so they're both injured, I'd guess. So Woodrow partnered Morris up front. Blackburn were unchanged from their win. And to be honest, the first half was pretty much a non-event. Brereton Diaz had that one chance where Potts cleared off the line, and they didn't show it in the highlights, but Lansbury had a chance when he went through on goal and basically done a pass back to their goalie. Second half though, it was all Luton. We didn't press first half. It was sort of a game plan, but second half we pressed them from the front, and they were just giving us the ball away constantly. Morris scored the first goal, and I love it when you because he on the Twitter thing that Luton put out, it's just a massive smile,
Yeah,
and you keep replying, "You have to love that smile" or
yeah,
something like that. He's now got 6 in 6, so he's joint second top goal scorer behind Estupinan, and then Burke with a screamer for the second. But to be honest, I wasn't impressed with Blackburn. Um, they sort of kept trying to play out the back, and it just constantly wasn't working. So they then done a few goal kicks, and our centre backs were just just heading it away constantly, and they sort of got stuck in. They didn't know whether to play it out from the back or to go long, and in the end, they sort of were just mucking it up on both chances. That I'm guessing Brereton Diaz is the main question. Like I say, he did have that one chance. We know they've got the double in 14, so look, we're all going to have Brereton Diaz for the 14. But anyone else, I honestly couldn't recommend anyone after watching that game live.
yeah. I mean, I think it's become increasingly clear that because Thomason wants them to do something a bit different to what they were doing before, they are clearly a work in progress, and so they know they're going to be a work in progress this year. So I think that adds to the idea of making it a bit tougher to go with any of them.
Also, I think, sorry to butt in,
Yeah,
I think I think they'll be good on the counter, and I think a lot of their goals have been scored on the
yeah,
counter, but Luton won't allow you to counter, and I think the teams who they're playing through the double probably will just let them have the ball, and that's when I worry about how good they are of actually breaking teams down.
yeah. I mean, that's where I potentially look at someone like Ryan Hedges. If you are looking
Mm.
at another option, could potentially be one of these players who could make something happen. But like you say, it does make it a little bit tougher with that double. Yeah, I mean, in terms of these two teams, I think I mean, everyone knows sort of at this point that I've taken to sort of tweeting about whenever Carlton Morris scores, and like you say, that sort of gif is just so perfect because he's just there
It is,
grinning
yeah.
or whatever, and it's just like what a guy, or you got to love that smile, or because yeah, I mean there's no greater feeling than having a player in your fantasy team who's scoring goals. It's what we all love. But yeah, so sort of having gone with that one that was a less sort of obvious move, less people were doing it. That sort of adds that extra satisfaction to it as well. And it's another goal for him. And
James Bree on bonus
Bree
again.
racking up the bonus. We say like every time. He's another one of these bonus machine, and yeah, it means. I mean, I know I sold him at one point earlier in the season, but it would take a lot for me to sell him at this point, to be honest. Like at
Right.
any
It's
point.
only injury. It's only
Yeah.
injury that I'd sell him for now.
If people want to go with someone like Bell as well, I think that's not a terrible pick either. I've seen a couple on the double up. I think that's not bad.
Yeah, Horvath as well. I
Yeah.
know a few people jumped on.
Yeah, Blackburn wise, I mean, at the moment, I'm thinking it might be worth looking at a defender for their double, but I'm sure we'll talk about their double closer to the time.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the next game, which was Preston 0, Sheffield United 2. So obviously the big news for Preston. There have been a couple of
Yeah.
comments about it prior to the Burnley game, even in midweek, about Brady potentially losing his place to Fernandes. It did happen in this game. And and Hughes coming back into the defence. I think that does help them a bit, although obviously it didn't help them in this game. And for Sheffield United, it was basically as expected at this point. The one change I think was Brewster coming in further up the pitch, and yeah, I think Sheffield United still look like right now they might be the best team in the league. And they've got something.
They are. Yeah.
They've got something that's really working for them, back to front. I mean, they had to shift things when Lowe got injured in terms of Norrington Davis, who'd been doing really well at left centre back. They had to move him to left wing back, put Basham in at left centre back where he's not used to playing. Which I think was probably the right move rather than moving Amatodsic from where he's been playing well and sort of then shifting 2 positions around or
Yeah.
3 positions around, just shifting those. Basham, obviously, there was the clip doing the rounds on one of their goals or their goal in midweek where it all started with him with a last ditch tackle in their own area. But yeah, in this one, it felt comfortable. I know if you look at some of the stats, it wasn't quite as comfortable, but it felt like Sheffield United. I mean, first half, apparently Preston were massively in the ascendancy, and then Njai just managed to sort of
Good
nick the
goal.
ball and get a goal, largely of his own doing, and then they worked the second goal for McBurney. But yeah, I think they're showing the sort of depth of options they have. They're missing a number of players, and the quality of team they can still put out, the quality of bench they can still have. That's where you're sort of really looking at it at the moment and saying, yeah, they're a really good team. In terms of sort of the Gaffr options, I mean, I've talked about Amatodsic. He's, it's one of these things. You look at it. Basically, every game he's in the bonus if he doesn't get booked.
Yeah. Well, they gave a stat out. They've conceded 1 goal in the last 6, and I think that was probably Luton's
Yeah,
Colton Morris header.
yeah.
Um,
And yeah, Amatodsic, like I say, he's in the bonus basically every time if he doesn't get booked. I think he took top bonus in this one. Norrington Davis, I've sort of been giving to some people as a pick because I think he was doing so well at left centre back that even if someone came in at left wing back, he'd probably drop back into left centre back, and he's a slightly cheaper way into their defence if you're looking to get there. We've talked before about Njai's the main man. Berger's still a good pick. I know there's someone else that you wanted to mention, Dan, so let's get into it.
I think you've got to start mentioning it. It's McBurney. He's now got 4 goals in the last 5 games. Like I said, when he played Luton, he scored his first goal for about 20 months or something. He looked physically fit, As in he looked match fit. Obviously, last season he was coming on for 10 minutes here and there, but he looked like he was match sharp. So I'm not sure if he's shown he's explosive, but as we've mentioned earlier in the pod, if they go through it, say for example, if they had whole next game week, like it's not a terrible
Yeah.
for if you've got a 1 week punt to go on with Bernie. And the other point is Brady. Is Brady a sell, Angus, now?
Personally, I think so. Um,
Yeah,
I I'd benched him the last two anyway, and obviously I hadn't been hurt at all in midweek, and then was even less hurt in this one. Um, it's also interesting to observe with that the Preston fans were booing when Fernandes got taken off, and they apparently a not insignificant number of them chanted "You don't know what you're doing" at Ryan Lowe for taking him off. So clearly they weren't happy with that. Um, but it did look, even from the highlights, like he was sort of
yeah,
very involved, and he's been bright whenever he's played for them. So I do think they look at it and think this could be a really exciting player for them. Um, so I think Brady probably has to be a sell at this point. Um,
yeah. Like I said, he's in my team. Going into away days, he's going to be my 12th man. Um, so I'll probably just keep him as I want to do the Piero to Morris
yeah,
move, but he's probably one that will go pretty sharp. Especially if it. I'm not saying he's lost his position, but if we start getting 3 game weeks and he's only playing 2 games and coming off at 60, 70,
yeah,
when we've just named Bree, Giles, Aaron's, Jones, and Matodzic, players like that, you he's a sell, isn't he?
yeah, yeah. I think if people either have other issues or want to give it one more game to see what happens at the position, that's totally fine. But I think you
Yeah,
have to be, if you're not going to sell him right away, you should be thinking about what, like, who you're going to go to from him, because you're going to want to sell him if he doesn't come back into the team quite quickly.
yeah, I agree.
Um, but we'll move on to our next game, which was Millwall 2, Blackpool 1. So Dan, talked to us about this one.
Um, yeah, I'm not overly got a lot to say about this game. The main news, um, to be honest, one was a shock in the lineup. Barkowski was dropped, and he's been probably one of the best championship goalkeepers over the last, well, 2, 3 years we've been playing this. And so Long started, and Long is now 4.9. So I'm not saying jump on, but straight away, but if it ends up he's playing at 4.9, he's near enough an auto selecting goal for a Millwall side. Malone came in at left wing back, which meant Styles played centre mid. A Honeyman was brought back into the team and played behind the Phobe. Blackpool, they made a few changes after they got beat by Rotherham. Gabriel, Williams, and Paveda were out. Husband, Patino, and Lavery were in. Um, Millwall won the game, but I'm not interested in any of these. They're both wait and sees. Um, like I said, keep an eye on that the goalie situation for Millwall, but nothing from these sides. Angus,
No, not really. Blackpool will pick up the odd point here or there, but you don't really want any of their assets. Malone was back in, but can you guarantee he's going to stay in? I don't think so. So no, I wouldn't be looking. Like you say, it's just Long. If there's anything to this Bialkowski being left out, then obviously
yeah,
that could be a very handy one. Um, so we'll move on to Huddersfield 1, Cardiff nil. So I didn't have a lot to say about this game. That's obviously changed a little bit today. We're recording Sunday. So obviously the only sort of thing in this one was a very well taken goal by by Jordan Rhodes. There's quite a bit of change in the lineup, including Etienne Kamara playing in midfield. Apparently played very well in there.
Yeah, highly
Um,
rated youngster.
yeah, after Schofield had been sacked. I think Schofield was sacked after we last podded. So
Yeah, we haven't really done it because of the passing of the Queen, and then
yeah,
I think we're getting confused because we did do a Spaces,
yeah.
but
But yeah, obviously Schofield, since the last time we recorded, has been sacked by Huddersfield. And then on Sunday, out of pretty much nowhere, Steve Morrison was sacked by Cardiff. Uh, so
I don't I don't get this. I
so
don't
we're
get
now
that.
talking about two teams that will be hiring new managers. I know it hasn't been great for Cardiff, but they won in midweek. They only narrowly lost this one. They allowed Morrison to bring in, what was it, like it was some stupid number of players, um, like 14, 15 new players or something, and then they've given him 10 games. And some of those players were brought in like after those 10 games had started. So um, I'm not really sure what the thinking is there. Um, but yeah, I don't know what you think on it.
Well, we discussed before we started recording. I don't know how good a manager Morrison is. He basically got a free ride last year because the teams down the bottom either had points deductions or were bad, Peterborough or Barnsley. So he only had to be mildly competent to stay up. So you then give him a chance to, as you mentioned, overhaul the squad. He's done that. They're doing all right. Like they're probably where I'd expect them to be. They've just signed a striker, which they hadn't had for what 7, 8 games of the season. Um, and you just sack him, and I just don't get it. I don't know if Morrison said some things behind to the owners or something, but yeah, I don't know. I was surprised. Let's put it this way: I thought other managers would have gone before Morrison. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I
until they
think
get a new manager, you don't know about their assets really.
no, and that's the problem. I mean, we're getting a little bit of a better idea with Huddersfield, but even then, they might well be hire a new manager in this break, and we don't necessarily know what their team's going to look like. You'd think the same with Cardiff. I mean, probably the most logical one is Callum Robinson because he's probably the best player they've got, so he'll play in some form, whether it's in a wide position or as the striker.
But he's 8 because obviously he got priced for West
Yeah,
Brom, so he's
yeah,
like a lot expensive. So he's got to be playing up front
yeah.
really to even be an option. I think.
But it's one of those things you'd want to see a bit more before you go with them. Um, so yeah, so it's all a bit. The game feels like a bit of an afterthought when we're talking about two managerless teams. But
It's an important result though for Huddersfield.
yeah,
It puts them in touching distance.
yeah, I think it was big for
Um,
them just to get 3 points really in a game. Um, but we'll move on to the next game, which was Wigan 0, Reading 1. Dan, talk to us about this one.
so the big news in this game was Amos started
Yes.
after everyone brought him in and he had back spasms. He obviously won the fight against the physios and everything to get him put back in the side. For Reading, Rahman started left wing back. Andy Carroll, they've got him back. He's back on the bench. He's been allowed
Are we going to talk about the
disgracefully.
shirt number?
We're having it. Number 2, Angus. That's disgraceful. Like
Yeah, well,
9, 10, 19, like 2.
yeah.
Don't let your
This
kids
this set
decide.
off a whole conversation
Oh
in our
god.
group chat, but just to limit it to this, yeah, strikers wearing number 2. It's not right. Uh,
We then went through all the players that played with silly numbers on
yeah,
William Gallos
William
and all
Gallas
that
wearing
lot.
10 at Arsenal. Both Khalid
Barros
Boularus
5,
and Steve Sidwell wearing number 9 at Chelsea. Barosh 5 at
yeah.
Liverpool. Yeah. Which the
Drop
fact
drop
the
in the
fact we're talking about
comments
this
any
probably
numbers.
says everything about about the game.
Yeah. Well, it's another good win for Reading. Good
Yeah,
free kick from Ince. We've mentioned numerous times Ince is an option because he does well on the bonus, and what I think he got 11 points. Did he something like that?
I think
I'm
it was
guessing
that.
it'd be yeah. And the most important thing is they do have that double in game week 14, which sorry, not Reading, Wigan do,
Yeah,
which is probably something we should mention. Um, they got pretty decent fixtures until then, so we've seen. I think Keane's been brought in quite a bit. I think he's an option. I've got the two goalies from Wigan on my overhaul with Amos, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, I've not got too much to say.
yeah. I mean, I think a few people are looking at sort of particularly the Wigan midfield assets.
Yeah,
I mean, McLean's a bit weird at the moment because he's playing left back. Um, just because of a couple of issues in their squad, which has also meant that Asgard has come into the team for the last couple.
great goal against Luton,
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure whether he'll stay in the team like once they get that sort of
yeah,
balance back. Whether he'll stay in the team is a bit more of a question mark, which particularly when you're looking down the line a number of weeks feels a little bit of a potential issue. Reading wise, you've basically got the goalkeepers or Tom Ince. Um,
yeah.
I think that's about it really. Um,
Andy Carroll, number two, disgraceful.
we'll move on to the next game, which we were all fortunate enough to watch, which was Middlesbrough nil, Rotherham nil.
I was excited about this game.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be quite decent, and it wasn't the worst game, but it wasn't exactly the most interesting game either. It wasn't exactly the most compelling game. Um, in terms of the lineups, the big thing for Middlesbrough, um, Zach Steffen was back in goal. I think that was big for them. And Dyke Steele came in for McNair, which I think, given that McNair got hooked at half time in the previous game, wasn't necessarily sort of the most difficult to predict. And Watmore came in for Mowat. McGree dropped back into midfield, and it gave more of a actual partner to Muniz. I mean, I know McGree had been playing close to him, but there was sort of a difference giving him a strike partner. Um, and yeah, I think Rotherham was largely as expected. I think it was Humphreys who came back into the team. Hall was ineligible because he's on loan from Middlesbrough. And yeah, it was a bit of a cagey game. I think Middlesbrough should have won the game. I think they had more of the chances. Um, I mean, there was the Watmore one where he basically gets around the keeper and manages to hit the post, and then it go right across the face of goal. He had chances. Muniz, I think, had a couple of chances. Jones had a couple of chances. They just couldn't quite connect, and that sort of feels like how it's going for Middlesbrough. The plus point for those on double defence, that's a clean sheet on the board. And for those playing away days, the added bonus of Isaiah Jones didn't get booked. That
Yeah,
tense watch of him being on 4 bookings and needing him next week or next game week, because obviously it being a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, from a Gaffr point of view, if you were on the double defence, particularly if you weren't on someone like Muniz, this was a great game in terms of the outcome. Um, but yeah, I think you wouldn't be worried. I still wouldn't be worried about owning them. I think the setup looked better balanced with Dyke still coming into the team. I think the problem with the McNair, Fry, Clark trio is there wasn't anyone with any sort of recovery pace or athleticism. And I think Dyke Steele also combines better with Jones and Crooks on that right hand side in terms of sort of underlaps and overlaps, and it just works slightly better with him there, I think. What more works better is in terms of it being an actual front two, but what more it will also make it infinitely more frustrating. So
he
that's
got man of the match.
How he got man of the match, I do not know. But yeah, I think the setup was better for them. Rotherham, I think they gave a good account of themselves. They came in to sort of make life difficult for Middlesbrough to go away and try and get something from the game, and they did that in the end. I wouldn't be too worried. People who own Ogbene, like particularly at his value, you're going to go through periods where he doesn't do anything for you, but um, I still think he showed he had elements of sort of threat when he was on the ball. So I think Middlesbrough were better set up in this game, so he wasn't able to do as much damage. But I still think he will have the potential to do damage against some other teams. Aside from Johansson and probably Wood, given his sort of set piece returns, I probably wouldn't be looking at anything else from them. Middlesbrough, it's the same old suspects, really. I don't know if you had anything to add on them.
No, it's pretty much as you said. Rotherham was solid, and Borough, they never really looked like conceding, and it was just whether they could score.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
Uh,
up. I've had double Borough for 3 game weeks, and 2 of them they've kept clean sheets. So I feel like I'm winning that one at
yeah.
the minute.
But we'll move on to the next game, which was QPR 0, Stoke 0. Dan, talk to us about this one.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed with QPR in this one, considering I brought in Willock to go with the chair double up. Guessing for QPR, Roberts was up front still. Um, Stoke, no Brown or Timon. It was a pretty even game, wasn't it? I'm not gonna. There's not much really to talk about for the game. I think it's more talking about maybe the assets moving forward. Um, we're both on the double up. Um, I'm not sure it's going to last for long, but I think for away days against Bristol City, I think it's viable. Um, and Chair's just done so well on the bonus. I think he got 6 even without really doing much. So I think Chair's probably the better option at the minute. But I'm quite happy to be on the double up going into Bristol City. And for Stoke, it's still a wait and see at the minute. Powell's not got back in the team yet. They keep changing wing backs and full backs and strikers. So um, if you're on Baker, I'm guessing you're just going to keep him. But yeah, that's basically it for these 2 teams.
Yeah, I think that's about it, really. Like you say, I think the double up it will do for the meantime, but I wouldn't be looking at it sort of long term unless something particularly changes. Stoke is tough to go with anyone really.
Yeah,
Although I guess the one thing we should mention is Timon did come back into the starting lineup in midweek. So for those who were keeping an eye on him, although he wasn't even in the squad at the weekend, so that's just something to keep an eye on for those
yeah,
who were looking at him or owned him and wanted to potentially go back. But we'll get to the last game. Birmingham 0, Coventry 0. Really don't have much to say about this one. The biggest thing of note, it felt like the true Gustavo Harmer experience. He had, I think it was 4 shots in the opening half hour, and then got himself sent off for getting involved in a silly sort of altercation.
4 game ban.
Yeah, because it's already his second red of the season, which they've played 7 games. You think he already served a suspension, and he's been sent off twice. It's quite remarkable, really. And this was just stupid. Like he got suckered into sort of a nonsense tangle by Hannibal, and it did look like he kicked out. It looked like he knew exactly what he was doing,
Yeah,
and although he obviously protested a lot about being sent off, I think he knew what he was doing. So he'll be out for a while. Robin spoke about hoping that O'Hare would be back not too long after the international break. It also sounded like he was leaving room in what he said for it to still be a little bit longer with O'Hare. So we'll sort of wait and see on that. But
I think I'm not sure attacking is. I know they drew 0-0 here, but I think it's defensively they've been struggling.
yeah,
If it was anything to go by from what I saw when they played Luton, I did want to mention for Birmingham that they seem to have a 4.0 defender starting in Williams.
yeah,
I know, people are gone quite big at the back, but I just thought if we end up wanting Sarr and Pookie and things like that, it's not a terrible player to keep an eye on.
yeah, exactly. I think that's the sort of thing that could become valuable to us. But that's all of it for the games. So we'll get to your questions now. Thank you to everyone who has sent in questions. And we'll jump right in. First one we've got is from FPL Commander. Said, is taking a -4 to turn Sarr into Pookie worth it? He also said, who to replace him to make fun? To replace Sarr, that is. A Wigan midfielder or a Blackburn midfielder? And finally, replacing the Hull striker with Pookie here in this game week is a good idea. So the 4 midfielders he's shown is Chair, Baker, Sarr and Brownhill. And the 3 strikers he's currently got are Keane, Estupinian and Rodriguez. So I think I'd start off by saying, for me, taking a -4 to turn Sarr into Pookie is worth it. In terms of replacing him, I mean, you can go with a Wigan midfielder or a Blackburn midfielder if you're looking towards the double. In that case, I'd probably still say McLean in terms of Wigan midfielder, just because I think he will play. And even if he's playing from sort of fullback / wingback, he will still get forward and be involved. And if it's a Blackburn midfielder, I'd probably go Hedges. But I'd potentially look elsewhere there. And yeah, Estupinian would be the one I would take out for Pookie. I don't know if you have
Yeah.
anything else to add there, Dan.
No, I think you're pretty summed up. I wouldn't be thrilled going for Blackburn, but I think with the double
Yeah.
and Hedges, you can bench him in the games leading up to it. Yeah, I don't hate it.
Next question we've got is from SkiHouse78, who says he's got 2 questions, if you will, chaps. Thoughts on using the last boost in game week 14? He's thinking of Captain Fantastic with a double game week captain, for example, Ben Brereton Diaz, versus using midfield dynamos with mainly single game week players. This is also, do we think Sargent can, quote, cover Pookie, or is he a sell now he's been punted out wide? So, Dan, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so I don't hate the Captain Fantastic. Everyone's going to have him, and he'll probably be captain for most people. Midfield dynamos isn't terrible, I don't think. Um, you've got um, you've got maybe like Brownhill against Coventry, Teller. You've got maybe Nunez from Norwich against Preston. You've got QPR against Reading. You got West Brom against Luton. So it's not terrible, those midfield dynamos. If say you've already got 2 or 3 of them, I think I might play midfield dynamos, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you can always mix in one of the Wigan or Blackburn guys if you want to in with those players. You've
Yeah,
also got, for example, Sheffield United at Stoke. That's not necessarily a bad game to have and Jai.
yeah.
And so on. Like there's
Maybe
options sort of
Sema
for
against Blackpool
yeah.
for Watford. It's not terrible.
So I think there's options potentially throughout for a midfield dynamos, even if you don't want to go sort of hard into the doubles. And his second question, Sargent covering Pookie. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know. I'm not. I know he's doing all right, Sergeant. I know it's the only game week he hasn't returned in a while, but I just think Pookie is now the main man again, and Pookie will probably outscore Sargent in say the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 games. But it's just whether you think that's 3, 4 million more than what Pookie is and what you can do with that money.
Yeah, I think if you're hoping he'll sort of cover the points that Pookie gets, I think the last 2 or 3 have shown that's not going to be the case. Um, but it also depends what else it enables you to get. But um,
Because you've got the double at the minute, haven't you?
yeah,
So you're going into away days with the double, I'm guessing.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
then what is your thought process to get rid of Sargent the game soon after?
he'll
To
probably become Brereton Diaz.
yeah,
Um, that's sort of what I'm thinking at this point. That
yeah,
that he'll
makes
end
sense.
up just becoming Brereton Diaz. I might have to shift something around slightly, but loosely, that's my sort of plan for him in the short term. Um, Next question we've got is from Shibid a bit. And he has asked, is Aaron someone who you can sell for a cheap defender as he's offering no bonus or attacking returns? So Dan, I'll throw this to you.
I think we mentioned this earlier in the season when I think you sold Bree and Aaron's, didn't you?
Yes, yes, I did.
And I th- at the time I thought Bree was a risk
Yeah,
selling, but Aaron's I think you can because I think whereas Bree, Luton will probably only ever win 1-2 nil or something like that, and he'll probably be involved in it. Norwich could win 3-4 nil, and so you then get the midfielders and the strikers taking all the bonus. Um, I think Aaron's could be a sell.
yeah.
Well, I don't hate it, to be
Yeah, I
honest.
mean, it's telling at that point. The one that I felt worse about selling was Bree, and the one that I was more urgent to get back was Bree. So, from my point of view, I think yes, you can probably get away with selling Aaron's, particularly if it's
Although,
freeing up funds.
yeah, although I do, he- he's just safe though, isn't he,
Yeah,
Aaron's? Like you don't have to worry about him. You just play him. Sometimes he don't get a clean sheet. Sometimes he does.
yeah. I mean, the argument then would be something like you might as well go down slightly cheaper to someone like
Oh
Omar
yeah.
Delhi rather than having Aaron's.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Um, but
Yeah.
and at some point, I think before too long, by the sounds of it, the likes of Giannoulis might be back, and that might be an alternative, even if that just saves you a little bit and still getting a
Yeah.
fullback. Um, but yeah, I think you can sell him, particularly if it frees up something else. FPL Frustration has asked, is it worth persisting with this Stupinian, or is it time to move on? Hull's form isn't great, but the fixtures in the next 4 are fairly good. Thanks, chaps. So it's tough with him. And I think we're talking about the manager being sacked, which could change things um, at any moment. Um, they don't have the worst fixtures coming up, which is the other thing he said there. My issue with him is it's gone a little bit cold, and it feels like there are more strikers that are potential options now. Where we were talking about struggling to pick strikers, it now feels like a few more, particularly at the cheaper end, are putting their hands up. Where I do wonder whether um, it might be worth moving on. I wouldn't necessarily be rushing to, but I do sort of think I understand where the doubts are coming in. I sold him this week, which is part of my move to get Pookie, which is obviously slightly different. I mean, if you can turn Estupinian into Pookie, that's obviously a good move at this point. But I don't know what you think on it, Dan.
I think if you look, a lot of his goals were tap-ins, so which involves having to create chances, and I don't know. I'm just not convinced at the minute, and like you could keep him and you could get like to 2, 3 more weeks, and he's maybe got one goal, and then the person who you could have punted on could have got 3 or 4 goals, and that's the thing. I've been a bit too passive with the striking options, and I think that's cost me. Whereas, as we've mentioned, you've been a bit more aggressive, and it's worked out really well. This isn't like last season where there was only 4 or 5 options. There's a lot of options, and it's mainly down to fixtures that you should be picking the strikers on. Obviously, have Pookie or maybe one other who you just keep in your side, but the other two just I'd be quite aggressive with your transfers. So I'd probably get rid, but he could like those fixtures are good enough. He could easily score 2 or 3,
Yeah.
but I think he's not shown anything really.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be desperate, but like if there's something else you want to do, I think he is at the point where you can sort of move him
Yeah,
on for something. Non-stop FPL has sent us is asked the best mid-priced midfielders for game week 13 midfield dynamos. Already planning on Wallace, Brownhill, and Sema. Cheers. Game week 13 midfield dynamos. Any thoughts, Dan?
maybe Sunderland midfielder. I'd be getting on Clark or someone like that
Yeah.
against Blackpool. What were the 3 sets? Sema,
He's already got
Brownhill,
Wallace,
Wallace.
Brownhill, and Sema.
Yeah,
I'd potentially look at a Middlesbrough midfielder, someone like Matt Crooks. He is
yeah.
getting on the end of things still, and I think at home against Birmingham could be a decent game.
I think Sunderland's the key
Yeah,
one, to be honest. Um, yeah,
yeah.
I keep looking at
Depending on what you
Coventry
call mid-priced, maybe someone like Nunez from
from
Norwich.
Norwich. Yeah,
They're playing Reading that week, so
it
that's
might be worth just getting 2 Sunderland in
yeah,
because they seem
something
to
like
score two
Pritchard
or
and
three.
Clark.
Yeah, they seem to score. If they score, they seem to
Yeah,
sort of score 2 or 3, don't they?
yeah. Um, So the next question we've got is from George FPL, who's asked the best 3 strikers for the next 4 game weeks, budget aside. Well, I think for the next 4, I'd still say Pookie.
Yeah,
I know that includes playing Watford away, but the other 3 are Blackpool, Reading, and Preston. Um, I'd probably say Brereton Diaz, particularly given that he's got the extra fixture in there.
yeah.
Um,
It might be someone like Keane from Wigan as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, their fixtures are obviously very good. It's probably something along those lines.
Yeah, but then you have got someone like
Yeah,
Morris. I think Nunez could start doing well.
yeah. Actually, I'm not
McBurney,
the biggest fan of Will Keane, so I'm going to say Pookie, Brereton Diaz, and Morris.
gotta love that smile.
Exactly, exactly. Petri Annanen has asked us whom to target for the game week 14 captainship or midfield dynamos, except the obvious Brereton Diaz for the captainship. So I think in terms of the captaincy boosts, game week 14, I think aside from Brereton Diaz, I mean there are a couple of players with singles or a couple of teams with singles where they're not necessarily the worst options. Um, Norwich against Preston, someone like a Pookie. If you haven't already got
Rodriguez against Coventry.
Rodriguez, yeah, against Coventry. Chair against Reading at home. And yeah, if he's back in the team, Ismail Assar plays Blackpool.
Yeah.
Uh, and given the number of people who've got on him and been burned, uh, if he is playing by that point, you might be one of the few people who actually owns him if you go for him. So
Yeah.
that's sort of a big potential one. Next question we've got is from FPLB, and he's asked us about the best use of boosts. I have 2 left and originally planned to use midfield dynamos in game week 12 and park the bus another game week. As I already own 2 Blackburn players, is multi-captain a better boost in game week 14 than using park the bus at some point? I'm not sure either of us would recommend against using park the bus, would we?
I think Park the Bus, apart from Way Days, is the best boost
Yeah,
in this set.
yeah. So I'd still be finding, even if you don't want to use park the bus in 14, depending on who your Blackburn players are, obviously, that might play into that. It might not. Like if you've got someone like a Pickering, then obviously park the bus in 14 is even better. If it's attacking players, then it doesn't work so well. Multi-captain, I generally don't like as a boost. I don't think there's enough of a gain. So if you were looking to play a captaincy boost, I'd probably play Captain Fantastic. But I still think there's value potentially to midfield dynamos and park the bus as the combination anyway. I wouldn't get too sidetracked by Blackburn and Wigan having a double. I think there's going to be a lot of people who adjust their plans probably too much for Blackburn and Wigan having a double. So that's the thing I'd almost say to be wary of. FPL Hindsight has asked us, along with Muniz, is Morris the best striker if you're playing away days next week?
Yes, he is. I think so. He's
Yeah,
playing against Hull. He scored 6 in 6.
yeah, and
So we
great
all know
smile.
he's gonna. He's got a great smile. So we all know he's gonna blank. But
Oh yeah, but on paper he is the best option to add. Eric has asked us the best front three for game weeks 12 to 15, which I think is the same question we've answered, isn't it?
yeah, pretty
In
much.
theory, it's Pookie, Brereton, Diaz, and someone like Morris, or
Yeah,
with the alternatives being, I would say, Rodriguez and Keane. And Brian Zoe has asked us, looking at the fixtures, is a double up on the Borough defence, Jones and Giles, a good idea? This feels like one of the most sort of hotly sort of contested, debated, discussed topics has been the Borough defence. What are your thoughts on it now, Dan?
do you know what I think it is because we've seen them. I think they've only kept 2 clean sheets, and yet they're still the 5th and 6th highest scoring defenders. So if they start keeping clean sheets, they're going to be the best options,
Yeah,
or one of them. Like I say, I think maybe Bree is up there as probably being consistent, and Ahmed Ozvich as well. But yeah, I'm just gonna. It's more the fact I just want to not make any changes in
yeah,
defence if I possibly. Now I've got them, I'm not making any changes in defence unless it's obvious ones. I want to be more aggressive in midfield and strikers. So at the minute, my defence is Bree, Giles, Jones, Aaron's, and Brady. Brady might have to go, but I'm looking at ideally just keeping those 4 with maybe, I don't know, getting another one in, and I'm just going to keep those 5 until I need to make a change because I want to be aggressive with my forwards and midfielders.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing. Is I think the two Borough guys I still believe are great owns. I've sort of defended owning the two of them the whole time, and I'll continue to do so because, as you said, they've kept 2 clean sheets all season, and the only defenders outscoring them are Richard Wood and his goal scoring extraordinary feats, Brady, Amatodsic, and Bree. That's it, and they've only kept...
Brady is down to the ridiculous clean sheets,
Yeah,
which isn't going to. I think Ahmedovic has got what 3 or 4 goals.
I think it's a couple. It
Or
might
is
be
it?
3, but he
Whereas,
also missed a couple of games, so that sort of
yeah,
evens out.
and when you think of Bree, I think we've only kept 3 clean sheets. He's
Yeah,
got a couple assists, so he's probably similar to Giles and
yeah.
Jones when
But I
it
think
comes
it's
to that.
illustrative there that, like, they're that high up after 2 clean sheets. So I think, yeah, I still believe that they're great picks.
Yeah,
That's all our questions. Thank you to those who have sent questions in. Um, Hopefully, this sort of helps you sort of think ahead. Um, I don't know if we'll be back doing anything before game week 12.
maybe spaces
Yeah, we
makes
might do a
sense.
space that we might do something during the international break, but it won't be about sort of Gaffr or whatever. We might do another sort of Q&A where you can ask us about anything, like, crisps and whatever. But we'll work that out. We might just take the international break off. We'll see how it goes. But we'll do a spaces before the game week. Our plan going forward is to sort of record the spaces and be able to release those. So but the one thing we will say is if that means that too many people don't want to participate, we'll stop recording the spaces, because the big thing for us is about people feeling that they can come on and interact and be involved. And if that's stopping people doing that, then we'll stop. But at least for the moment, our plan is to start recording the spaces, and so that people who can't be there can hear sort of the conversations and everything. But yeah, so we'll have one of those before game week 12. I sense there'll be lots of talking points at that point, particularly if anyone gets injured over the break as well.
Oh no, it's going to be Pookie, isn't it? I can just see it now.
It's definitely going to be Pookie. But yeah, so that's everything from us, and we will speak to you before game week 12. Goodbye.
Goodbye.